COO of Teaching Tips for English Language Teachers, a project of educators worldwide. And this month, our theme is project-based learning. We have a special guest with us today, Courtney Miles, who's joining us from my fellow state of Florida, but she's working also remotely or virtually as an English language fellow in partnership with the Embassy of Bahrain, as well as teaching in Florida. Thank you so much for joining us. Her topic today is language and leadership with student-led projects. Welcome, Courtney.
Thank you so much, Eileen. It's really an honor to be here. I'm excited. I love this topic a lot. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about what I've been doing in the classroom with the Embassy in Bahrain and with the students there.
Great, I can't wait to hear more. So just for our listeners, can you give us your definition, if you will, description of what project-based learning looks like to you? Because many people have different ideas about that terminology.
Definitely. I think for me, it would be having projects that are leading what the instruction and what the learning looks like in the classroom, and projects specifically that have a real world application. So projects that, for example, maybe students could actually use in the real world, use outside of just a classroom context, but are applicable directly to their context, their stage in life and what they're doing. And so within that, I view project-based learning as something that has a lot of variability and is really based on each individual student.
Super, that's a good answer to get us started. So would you like to give us some examples of how you implement project-based learning in your classroom, and particularly related to this topic of language and leadership? I'm intrigued how you're going to unfold the topic of student projects with language and leadership.
Definitely. So yes, language and leadership is the title of the course that I'm doing now in partnership with the embassy. And we get to partner with different organizations and universities throughout Bahrain and Iraq as well. And so through that, we have used project-based learning in a variety of ways. First, the students in our class are in very different stages of life. We have even from maybe 1 to maybe 2 elementary students that are there, and then we have some high schoolers, some college students, some people that are in the workforce. So project-based learning has been really great just for differentiation and for students to be able to have maybe a central topic. For example, one of our projects was to interview a leader. So through that, students were able to, based on their stage in life and who they were interested in learning more from, they were able to choose somebody that they could learn from and conduct an interview where they wrote questions, they created or had a meeting with their person, wrote down their answers afterwards, had to respond, in the moment. And some of them recorded that or just wrote down what they learned. So it was really cool because you saw a variety of ways that students completed the project. I was able to connect some students with people if they were unsure of where to go. And so through that, it was neat to see some students talk to other, elementary students or other high school students, or some people talk to someone that was in a job or a career that they were interested in. So we saw a variety of response to that, really based on each individual student.
Fantastic. So are you training teachers with this methods, or are you working directly with students, or both?
Both, yes. So some, really, there's people in a lot of different stages of life. I work with a lot of people that are entrepreneurs. Especially, we work with one women's entrepreneurship group. So there's a whole class just of women that are entrepreneurs that have their own businesses. I also have groups of teachers that are in different classes, and then some people that are students in a variety of subject areas as well.
Fantastic. That's helpful to contextualize how
Yeah.
you apply these projects. So can you give us an example, like how you would start if you're doing a course or a training, giving, like, how do you initiate the project, or how do you have the students initiate the project, because it's a student-led project? Can you explain that process for our listeners?
Definitely. So one thing that I have really enjoyed implementing in class, and this is probably something newer that I've begun using in my courses, is holding brainstorming sessions with students. So in brainstorming sessions, different students give ideas of maybe things that they want to practice, or skills that they're interested in growing. And it's cool because students kind of can feed off of each other. One student might give an idea, and then another student jumps on that. And so we've started implementing these brainstorming sessions where we've gotten together, and everything's virtual. So we might usually we keep some kind of a living document that we'll add to during each session, and write down notes of what most students are interested in, what their ideas are. And in a brainstorming session, just like how it might happen in a job or at school, when you're figuring out a project with your friends, we typically come together on, different students will come together on an idea, and through there we'll build a project. So whether that is conducting interviews, we come and we have that seed, and then different students give ideas of how that can grow and what that can look like. I'll ask specific questions based on the details that I know need to be included in a project. And then after that, we'll write up something more official for students to be able to follow as an official project. So through that, one of the cool ideas that came about recently was to use social media more for our projects. And through that, we've started doing Instagram lives. And that's been cool because within that project, students have proposed different ideas of what they want to do on an Instagram live, what they might want to talk about or demonstrate. And it's allowed students to kind of share leadership and shift roles, give ideas, give suggestions to each other. And it's become a really safe place for students to receive and also give feedback.
Fantastic. So you, as the lead, basically are facilitating the discussion, and they generate the project amongst themselves. Is that correct?
Yes. So I'll usually have some kind of targeted questions. And a lot of that too is based off of getting to know the students, getting to know what their interests are. And so keeping it on topic, keeping it on the topic of leadership, and making sure that we're doing projects that give a lot of room for just different variables for different students in different contexts to be able to do it in a way that benefits them. And so, sometimes if something is suggested that's really specific to an area, we might take it apart to make it a little bit more general, something that's more inclusive and allows every student to participate fully and get something out of the project. But that's been cool because really just through asking questions, and as a teacher kind of knowing different pieces that are important for all students to have clarity, using a student's idea, you can build those things out and create the official project. But it still feels like, and it is student-led, and it was the student's choice. And so through that, I found that students have a lot more buy-in and interest in what they're doing because they're the ones that, designed the project.
Definitely. And do you allow students to work in partner pairs, small groups, or individually if they want to?
Yes, I give tons of choice, a lot of choice. I really love doing that just because every student is really different. And especially for the case of learning language, everyone usually learning a language, it's one of the goals, but it might be for another goal. It's a step to get to another goal, whether that's communicating with more friends or travel or moving, or if, someone's in a context where they need it for work, or usually there's that other goal there. So I really love to give maybe too much choice. I love to allow students to really choose what best benefits them, and give them the autonomy that, they're the experts of themselves and what they need. And also challenging them to, take a step further, but listening to them when, when they need to stay in a certain zone, or something's best for them in the moment.
Super. That's great. I'd like to be your student. So we're going to wrap up in just a minute, but do you have a couple other projects that have been really successful that you could mention? You mentioned the interviewing one. Any other ones that you'd like to mention for our listeners, and the Instagram one?
Yeah. Instagram's been really cool because it has having like a class Instagram page. I had never done it before I joined, before I was a part of this this fellowship, and I'm so glad I did. It's been really fun. I was nervous, but it's allowed us to, one of the projects that students suggested was virtual galleries. So we had one titled The Beauty of the Middle East. And we have students that are mostly in Bahrain, but also in other places, or that have traveled and lived in different places, or live in Bahrain from another country. So it was cool because we had this beautiful like culmination of photos from all over the Middle East, and got to kind of create our virtual gallery that we posted through our Instagram page. And students posted captions. So it was a great writing activity. And the other thing about Instagram with leadership and entrepreneurship is that so many businesses are now happening online, that doing projects there has been really cool, because it's a safe space for students to try things that they can then implement on their own pages or for their own businesses. And so that's been interesting to hear from students what they could see themselves using, and even hear later, like, oh, like I got to use an Instagram Live for this other purpose. But without having that space to try it, it's kind of scary to do it for the first time.
Right.
So that's been a platform I've really enjoyed using for projects.
Super. That's great. I'll have to try it as well. Thank you for sharing that with our listeners. So did you mind summarizing your tips? You've given us a lot of great ideas. Just for our listeners, our summary tips for how they could implement language and leadership with student-led projects.
Totally. So I would say number one, find out what your students are experts at. That's something I've learned early on to start writing down. If I notice a student talks a lot about technology, I want to write that down. Or if they are really interested in owning their own business, I want to write that down. Or interested in a sport, like write that down. And so find out what they're an expert at, and then I would say number two, like follow their lead as the experts. So as there's projects where different students can take leadership, like allow different students to be experts, and to jump into different roles that they feel really confident in. I would say three, create safe spaces for feedback and for different voices to be heard. Often, and of course the virtual classroom, there's so many challenges. You might be talking to all screens that are off, and you can only see yourself. And so it can be hard to get feedback from every student and listen, but I would say keep working to create safe spaces and invite feedback, invite different voices, be teachable as the teacher, change up leadership roles. And then last, I would say give students a platform. So maybe, an Instagram platform might not be feasible for every role, for every teacher. I've loved using it. And if you've never done it, I would totally suggest, taking that route. Also just in the classroom, students leading discussions or trainings, but give them a platform to share, the things that they're an expert at or the things that they're learning in class. And have those times where, students get to learn from each other.
Fantastic. You did a phenomenal job of summarizing the tips and giving us all some great ideas. So we all have to go out and try the Instagram project now. Yeah. Thank you so much, Courtney. We hope to have you join us again to share some more great tips with our listeners.
Definitely. Thank you.